the idea of 10 cents when it comes to CKB hypothetically during a fully fledged type of altcoin season, if that were to happen, that would not surprise me whatsoever, even though nothing I say is financial advice. And let me explain why I have that mindset. It's because, first of all, I like the fundamentals when it comes to Nervos. Keep in mind, I would arguably say that the foundation of Nervos is something called CKB. Now, CKB stands for Common Knowledge Base. And if we take a look at it, allegedly, CKB is the most flexible and interoperable blockchain. That's a pretty bold claim, I would assume. However, we have to consider why even that has a role, I think, in all of this. Because again, I did mention the word interoperable before. And more specifically, if I think about just the idea of interoperability, I think it's something that's very crucial currently because if we take a look at how there's many blockchains out there, many networks out there, some of them, because they are independent of one another, they don't have this ability to freely send data and value to each other, meaning that they lack something called interoperability. So having interoperability, I think, is such a crucial role to really have in the grand scheme of things when it comes to this space. And it's only logical, I think, because if I believe in this space moving forward, I think it's only natural for me to assume that there's going to be more blockchains, that are going to pop up, more networks. And again, a lot of them would probably want to be interoperable. So I do find that as a pretty good thing to be focused on just for a project in general, because we see some projects out there, like for instance, Polkadot be focused on interoperability. We take a look at something like Axlar. So it seems like it's a market that is not like, boring where no project is focused on it. And again, Polkadot is very famous. Axlar is pretty famous. So I do like seeing that aspect when it comes to that. And also keep in mind, CKB is allegedly the first fully Bitcoin isomorphic layer 2 solution. Now, if we take a look at what is even the benefit of something like this, right? Like for instance, the purpose of something like this is to enhance Bitcoin by adding programmability and scalability. So I think that's pretty awesome. Allegedly as a result of this does aim to foster a thriving Bitcoin ecosystem. And we all know what Bitcoin has done. We all know how it's doing right now, right? The price is over 100 grand, actually around 120 grand right now. And also on top of that, we take a look at, for instance, the Bitcoin ETF, the number of enterprise adoption, the just whole vibe when it comes to Bitcoin is really good. Now, it hasn't really showcased that when it comes to the price of CKB, but I think that if we take a look at, allegedly again, trying to foster a thriving Bitcoin ecosystem, it's not such a bad thing considering how Bitcoin has such massive adoption. When it comes to CKB, allegedly, it does leverage the proof of work consensus algorithm. Now, why is this really good? Arguably, in my perspective, it's because Bitcoin is proof of work. And what is proof of work known for? It's known for its, I think, rock solid security, and I think also its reliability. Sure, some other projects out there, they rely on proof of stake, and I'm not saying it's bad or anything because it's worked very well for a lot of them, but it can't be argued that proof of work has that reliability, has that track record. And again, we take a look at Bitcoin, it's proof of work. So it kind of has this proven concept, I would arguably say. So I do like that aspect as well. So overall, when it comes to Nervos, it's not such a boring project to me. Granted, it may not be as cool as like some, meme coins or some blockchain gaming projects out there, or some projects out there that are heavily focused on AI. This is kind of like a different vibe. However, I think that Nervos has good fundamentals. I like the community as well. And I think CKB has a pretty decent amount of holders and also is listed in some pretty good exchanges. It may not be the best, but I think it's still pretty okay. And also on top of that, I don't think that the project is useless. Other projects out there, they seem to heavily rely on fans or hype, but this one doesn't seem to be the case. I don't think it's a project that's going to disappear once the fans or hype leaves because there's actual utility. However, this is just my perspective. And also, if I take a look at the idea of 10 cents when it comes to CKB, if it were to reach that price, at that point, market cap, considering current circulating supply, would be around $4.7 billion. So it's nearly $5 billion, but again, it's around 4.7. Now that right there is around a 16x from here. Some people may be thinking, okay, first of all, who cares about a 16x? Some people may arguably say. However, to me, I don't find that too disappointing if that were to ever happen, because if we take a look at, for instance, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, even though, again, Nervos, there's a lot tied to Bitcoin in a sense when it comes to its fundamentals. However, if let's say, even despite all that, Bitcoin going to 300 grand, that's less than a 3x from here. Not to mention Ethereum going to 10 grand, that's also less than a 3x from here. So for me, if someone said CKB or Bitcoin, even though again, I think a lot of, kind of the adoption when it comes to Nervos is going to really depend arguably on Bitcoin, but then I would still rather choose something like CKB because it is an altcoin, market cap is way lower, and I don't think we've really seen that fully fledged type of altcoin season yet. When it comes to Bitcoin, it's already kind of done its thing a little bit for this cycle. Now, there may be ways to go, but in terms of percentage price increase, again, going to 300 grand is still less than a 3x from here. So again, I'm not saying Bitcoin is bad or something like that, but then to me, I would rather just prefer CKB over Bitcoin if someone gave me those two options. Also, if we include Ethereum there, those three options, I would still rather choose CKB. Now, granted, I don't only just hold CKB, but then if I was only having those three options, that's the one that I would choose. And also, we take a look at the idea of even 5 cents, which is around an 8x from here. Even at that point, I would still rather prefer CKB over Bitcoin for the next 6 to 10 months. I'm not saying 10, 20, 30 years later. However, again, just like let's say in the next 6 months or whatever, this would still have to be my choice over Bitcoin. Also, let's say at 10 cents, right? Considering current circulating supply, just like I mentioned before, market cap around $4.7 billion. That is kind of actually, I think, not that bad in the grand scheme of things. I mean, Dogecoin reached over $80 billion in market cap back in 2021, and that was years ago. So I don't think this is too crazy of a market cap. Now, if CKB, despite the massive adoption of Bitcoin, needed, let's say, like a $50 billion or an $80 billion market cap to reach the price of 10 cents, considering current circulating supply, then, of course, even I wouldn't even consider that at all. I wouldn't even believe in that for this cycle. So then the thing is, it doesn't seem like such an outlandish market cap, at least in my perspective. Now, if we take a look at, for instance, some people like to say, oh, when is this going to happen or that? To me, I do not know the exact moment in time. For me, it's not about that. It's just about the preparation and preparing for a moment in time in which it does that, if that sort of makes sense. Because to me, instead of trying to find the exact moment, I'm just going to be dollar cost averaging, holding and just waiting, and just kind of waiting for that moment. I do not know the future, so the only thing that is within my control is just dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. That's it. If someone asked me, hey, why don't you pull up a price chart, draw some random triangle, my response is always, how is that going to affect anything? Like, for instance, if I drew some random triangle or I drew a falling wedge pattern or something like that, do you think that the market's going to care? Do you think the market's going to randomly do this or do that based off what I draw in the price chart? No, it's not going to do that. And also, I see some people out there, they pull up a price chart, they draw some random triangles, they say this is going to happen at this time, it doesn't, and then they just keep adjusting that triangle to sort of make it seem like, they did the right thing. But then what's the point? I'm just drawing at that moment, right? Or should I say at that point? So I'd rather just focus on the fundamentals, I'd rather just stay patient, and that's pretty much about it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's Willie the Captain, and I'll catch you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.